Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
These are your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything.
Nailed it.
Is the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by a debut historical fiction novelist, Lucy Barker. Hi, Lucy. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Let's get straight into it. Let's talk about the novel, The Other Side of Mrs. Wood, which not out right now, but will be out by the time this airs. Tell us a bit about it.
So, as you say, it's historical fiction, and it is about two warring mediums in 1873 London. And it's about this established medium who is brilliant at what she does. She's been doing it for a really long time and has made a really successful career out of it. But she's sensing that people are starting to want more, and bright young things is kind of starting to be written about in the Spiritual Times newspaper. So everyone's a bit like, what's coming up? So she feels a little bit unnerved by this. And then when the opportunity to take on a young upcoming medium and train her, when that pops up, she leaps at the chance, thinking this is her opportunity to stay relevant and to stay in the headlines and maintain her lifestyle, and not in a way that it is, she wants to kind of keep up with the riches and the wealth of it. What she wants is she wants to be able to sustain herself independently.
Do you know what's so funny is something like, the politics of like being a medium in Victorian London is not something that I've ever really read about or researched in any way whatsoever. But when you explain it and you talk about the plot like that, it's such a relevant sort of narrative, right? Like we're all kind of, as you get older, you kind of like, oh, I do this thing, but like there's a younger person who looks like they're going to start doing it better than me, and everyone's kind of like going to them and stuff. It's so like oddly relatable, even though it's a very unique kind of moment in time that you've picked, and then within that a unique sort of thing with. And when you say mediums, it's like seances and readings and spiritualism.
Yes.
But it's historical fiction. It's not, is it fantasy realism, or does it's sort of the sort of reality of what it was to be a medium? It's
very much the reality.
Yeah.
So it's not, I think I'm quite upfront about the tricks behind it, I suppose, as much as I can be, because probably not surprising, they didn't really write about how they managed to con loads of people out of money by conjuring up things.
Yeah, funny that.
And also I really, whilst it's about mediums and about spiritualism, I really wanted to use that as more of the backdrop. And I really wanted to, so it's interesting when you say about the relevance today. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is bringing these women who were living in the Victorian period, who not necessarily buck the trend, but, we think of the Victorian woman as a bit of a homogenous lump of just, someone who was subservient, who was repressed, and, all of those kind of, which is true, but also there were women like we're women, and they were trying to forge their way within a society that didn't necessarily make it easy for them. And that's what I wanted to talk about more, about the fact that, how did a woman become financially independent where there were very limited work opportunities, particularly if you're middle class. So the story is inspired by a true story. And the mediums that I discovered during my research, there are all these women who are just, they're really successful at what they do and they're really good at what they do. And I just really wanted to celebrate that. So yes, no, it's not magical.
To conclude,
it's really
not magical.
It's social and political.
Yeah. So what was it about sort of Victorian London that drew you into that?
Oh, I love Victorian London. I did an MA in Victorian Studies at Birkbeck College, and I did a fantastic course during that MA with Jerry White, who's such a brilliant historian of London. I mean, like when you live in London, which I was doing at the time, history is absolutely everywhere. You can see the steps are worn down by all the people that walked there, over the past hundreds of years. And it's just, I'm talking about it in a very romantic way. I too
have lived in London.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, when you look for it, there's so much sort of history, and it is easy to romanticize.
It's so rich. But I also really love writing about places that I know, and that, and I love reading about places where I recognize street names. So my book is set in Notting Hill, and I used to live down the less salubrious end of Portobello Road, so I know it really well. And also I love maps, so I could just spend years just looking at Victorian maps. So,
okay. So Victorian has always been Victorian. Is it specifically Victorian London that you're kind of fascinated in, or is it Victorian, that kind of era across the UK, across Europe?
Across the world, really.
Wow, okay.
I just find the 19th century really fascinating. You have a lot of primary resources, or sources rather, from the 18th century, but 19th century is where it really ramps up. You've got so many first-hand experiences that you can explore, and I don't know, they just feel so close, and they're so like us as well, the Victorians. We haven't really changed a huge amount in terms of what concerns us as a society. That's
true. And so within that, you love the period, the era. What was it that then drew you even sort of to the sort of quite narrow sort of area of mediums and seances within that?
Well, as I say, I've always wanted to write about women, and it seems, although there were men who were performing as mediums, it was a very female-dominated thing. Oh, okay. Women were thought to be more spiritual than men, and also it's something that they could do at home in their safe domestic sphere, where they weren't, where they could remain respectable. And it was a way of hanging out with your friends and doing something interesting. It was a way of feeling special, and that you had powers at a time when you didn't necessarily have them. So that's what really drew me in. And also I'm completely obsessed with the idea of the other side. So that was
okay.
I'm slightly obsessive personality, you might find that.
Right, yeah, okay. So you combined your two obsessions, Victorian times and the other side.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to write next.
So you mentioned that you did do an MA
yes.
in Victorian studies. And historical fiction as a genre obviously always requires usually pretty extensive research. Did doing that MA did it sort of give you enough of a view to just kind of start writing the novel, or did you figure out what the novel was about, kind of plan it, and then do more research?
I kind of did both. So I had the foundation there, and I had done I'd done some bits on spiritualism during my MA, but so I read around it a lot before I actually started properly writing, just to make sure that I got the feel of it right. But in terms of the proper detail research, I tend to do that as I write. You don't really know what you don't know.
Yeah.
until you get to that point. But as I say, I'm in a fortunate position because I'm kind of steeped in it already. I sound really arrogant there. I'm so steeped in history. But but I am, because I'm fortunate, because I really love that period. So and I've been writing in the Victorian period in many failed ways before this. So
Okay, so what sort of stuff had you written before this in that period?
Well, I did the Curtis Brown 6-month novel course back in 2014. And at that time, I was writing a Victorian novel about a woman who accidentally murders her husband, which is great because he's awful. So I got to the murder bit, which was probably, I don't know, about 5 chapters in. And then I didn't know where else to take her after that. And so, so that book was about 15 different books where she was in the States, she was in Wyoming, or she was in Northern England, or she stayed at home, So I wrote loads of different opportunities for her, and then put them all in the bin.
And so that was in 2014 you did the Curtis Brown creative course?
Yes.
What was that like?
Oh, it's brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And it's where I met my writing circle, who I've just been messaging with them this morning. Yeah, I wouldn't be where I was now if it weren't for the people that I met on that course.
Okay.
Absolutely not. They kept me going.
Well, speaking about keeping you going, and more importantly, singing your praises, and it's very commonplace and I'm sure anyone who's been in a bookshop recently knows that almost all books have quotes on them from other authors. And I couldn't help but notice that on yours, there are some very, very big names. Katie Ford, Lucy Diamond, Marian Keyes.
I know.
Are you when it's in the sort of, when you're in the publishing process, are you aware of who is getting these early copies, like where they're being sent?
Yes. Yeah, I am.
Okay.
So, I've basically just been this kind of wide-eyed blinking what person when all this stuff has been happening. I'll be sitting in meetings going, okay. I knew that they were going to go out to, they were going to do early bound, which I think are just ring bound A4 Word docs. And I knew that they were going to get them off to Marianne, and they wanted because the book is written, I don't want to say it myself, but I will say it. It's quite a witty book. And so they wanted others, writers with a similar tone. So Marianne Keyes, Lucy Diamond and Katie Ford were the first kind of names that kind of came into my editor's head.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And then when Marianne said, yeah, I'll read it, I was like, okay. I wasn't really expecting anything because I didn't think that she was really reading.
Right. Okay.
And then I was on Twitter on a Friday night, and as you do when you're in your 40s, and and I realized I had a DM, which I never have, and it was from Marianne.
Oh my god!
I was very excited.
Okay.
But she's such an incredibly generous author. I feel hugely privileged that she read and then blurbed my book. I mean, it's just bonkers. But the imposter syndrome is very real, because even though she's blurbed it, there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, she just feels sorry for you, babes.
Oh, I was about to say, if there's anything that's going to help push back against the imposter syndrome, it'll be having very well established successful authors saying, no, this is really good.
Yeah, no, it just makes it worse.
Okay, great. That's how you know you've got real imposter syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I was like, oh yeah, no, she just, and we actually had a bit of back and forth on my DMs. It was just so surreal. And she was like, no, really, I loved it.
That's amazing, because I guess, from your perspective, it was, and it's Fourth Estate, right?
Yes. I
guess from your perspective, they were sort of we're going to send it to these people, and you're like, oh, okay, wow, those are amazing people. Did you put any names forward?
Yeah. So after that bound one went out, when the proofs came in, which I think were November, end of November, maybe beginning of December, we did a massive list then of all of our wish lists, and so. Yeah, so you
did contribute to that.
Yes, definitely. People like Sophie Owen,
Yes, I saw
and there
her
were,
name on there.
yeah, who is so lovely. And again, incredible. The publishing is a weird world, but the support that you get from other writers is just,
Mm-hmm.
because we all know how hard it is. And so it's incredible though, that being a debut and kind of being welcomed so magnanimous. No, I'm not going to say magnanimously because that makes me sound like a.
I know what
But,
you mean.
you know.
Though. I had Katie Ford was on the podcast recently,
Oh,
and
was she?
she's
Oh, she's
such a nice and generous person with her time, and like she's had so much success and done so many amazing things in publishing that it's sort of like, wow. And this person is just so happy to just give back and help support
Yes.
up and coming writers, and it's great.
But I think it's because it is tough, and it's you spend all this time just like writing in this silo, and then suddenly other people are reading it, and you don't know if it's any good because you're so close to it.
Yeah, and you've poured a lot of yourself, not just yourself, but like you've poured so much time into this that it's kind of like, oh gosh, what if I've spent months, years doing this thing, and everyone's like, yeah, this is pretty bad,
yeah. Well, according to some of the 1-star reviews I've had,
Okay.
But you're right though, because I'm in my late 40s now, and I've been doing this since I was, I've been writing since forever, but I have been plugging away since I was 20. I started writing my first proper book.
Was it always Victorian?
No,
that came later.
I never wanted to do historical because I thought it just sounded like too much hard work.
Okay. I actually had a similar feeling, but then it was after you read a few historical. It was Bernard Cornwell. I read a couple of Bernard Cornwell's books, and I was like, I probably am not going to write historical ever. But after reading that, a part of me was like, maybe I should write this. This is awesome.
Yeah, and actually, that there's that quote, which is like the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. And I think the way to approach historical is to just think of it that you're just writing about a different place.
Yeah.
You're always going to have people in cardigans who are going, well, I don't think that they would have used like a spatula.
Well, technically the belt buckles would have been made of different material than that. But
Exactly. You're always going to have those types. But, as long as you research the things that matter. And it's great, God, who doesn't want to escape to a different world as soon as when they sit down that laptop?
Yeah. And the beauty of historical is that thing of knowing that, like, gosh, this kind of happened. It's historical fiction, of course, but there's a party that's like, wow, this is like kind of how it was, and it's weird to think that this really happened, this really existed, which is different from something like sci-fi or fantasy, where it's sort of speculation. It's like, this could happen. This is like something that someone might do in this situation.
Yeah, exactly. And my book is based on a true story. So, it's inspired by these two mediums, Agnes Guppy, which is the best name in the world, and Florence Cook. And Florence Cook is known as the first medium in Britain to materialize a full spirit. And she did that in the early 1870s when she was about 15. And Agnes Guppy was this long-standing, well-established medium who became embroiled in this rumor that she was really jealous of Florence. It's this very human kind of behavior that's kind of going on.
I feel like that happens so much at least movies tell me that there's always like a movie that comes out about like there'll be a pop star, and it'll be the sort of the legendary sort of has always been famous pop star getting older, and then the young new thing coming on the scene, and the rivalry between those two. So it's one of those, as you say, it's like it's timeless, that kind of story of the young upstart and the sort of old and sort of fading away.
And I think that sense of when you're really experienced, when you feel like, you have so much you can share with them, but actually they don't really want that much. What they want is a leg up.
Yeah.
And I think that, the vanity and the sense of self-importance is really present in both.
Yes.
So, I can't remember why we started talking about it, but
I don't know, medium seances and stuff like that. Let's go back to...
Hello, Saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
So you did the Curtis Brown creative course. Your agent, Lucy Morris, is also at Curtis Brown.
Yes.
Was that a meeting that came out of the course, or did that happen separately?
That happened separately. So I didn't really write for a couple of years after the course because I had children, as in I had them. I made them in that time.
Yeah.
And rather than just using them as an excuse. Oh, no, I generally do anyway. And then I've been noodling around with that other novel, and then Curtis Brown announced their first novel award in 2019, and so my writer friend Fran Quinn, name drop, she was like, right, you're going to enter that, and then it was with Fran that I was kind of playing around with different ideas, and so I entered it, and I came second, and Lucy offered me representation. So that's how even though I've done the course, I think I was the only one in the shortlist who'd done the course, so it wasn't necessarily related.
Right. But it was a Curtis Brown competition.
It was a Curtis Brown competition, 2019.
Okay, and so you then was that with this book?
Yes,
The Other
it
Side
was.
of Mrs. Wood. Okay,
yeah.
right. And then you would have worked on it for a bit with Lucy, and then presumably it gone on sub to publishers. Yeah.
So I worked on it off and on because then lockdown happened, and then I didn't really write during lockdown because I have small children who weren't in childcare, which is a special kind of hell. And so I couldn't really write for ages. So it took me about a year to do the first draft properly. And then Lucy very discreetly came back and said, wow, there's lots to love.
Yeah.
And then I rewrote it again, and then subbed to her in January last year. And then we did loads of edits. I have to say that I am so lucky. Lucy is an incredible agent. She's a brilliant editor. And we honed it until it went out. Actually, a year ago, I was having my pitch meetings this time last year. Today? No. My launch day will be a year to the day that Fourth Estate pitched to me.
Oh, great. Okay. So lots of edits with Lucy. Did you then do many more edits with your editor at Fourth Estate?
No, I was really lucky because Lucy had whipped it into such incredible shape. It was so polished. The notes that came back, so I sold in the UK and in the US. So my two editors, Millicent and Katie, kind of came together and brainstormed the edits. And then I had one round of edits, and then Katie asked me to undo some of those edits because she thought she'd made a wrong decision about changing the direction of something. And then it was just line edits. So I was in a really fortunate position. Yeah,
that's great. Lucy really did a great job with you before subbing.
Yeah, she did. And I think also that it's really difficult when you're editing because you're really close to your work. And also you've got all these pages full of darlings that you just don't want to kill off. And I think I'm not precious anymore about my writing. And it's like, if you don't think that works, fine, it's going,
Yeah.
I think, I just listened to other people, and that really helped me.
I think that's a great skill, and I think it comes with time. Like, the longer you spend writing, the more you understand that it's okay for me to delete a whole chapter, for me to delete like some thousands of words. That's fine. If it was good, like it's kind of like the Stephen King thing where I don't fully agree with not taking notes, but Stephen King thinks you shouldn't take notes and stuff, because if the idea is good enough, you'll remember it. Which I don't fully agree with, but
no.
The idea of me, whenever I think like, okay, I'm going to delete a few thousand words. That like when I was, when I first started writing, I was like, oh, how could I do that? Like, there's so much time, like maybe there's something really good in there. And now I think, oh, if there was something really good in there, I will have remembered it, and I can easily just type it up again.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, I can just say about the Stephen King is, I love him. That's a man that's not multitasking.
Yes, yeah.
That's a man who's not thinking, oh God, have I done the kids' PE kit?
Have I made them pack lunches? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, there's no socks. Sun cream. I need sun cream. I went off tangent. Obs. That was always going to happen. Just Stephen King always takes me off on a tangent.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried about. I think you're right. I think you will remember it, and I think. I mean, I always have I work first in Word, and then when I can start to see the shape of it, I put it onto Scrivener, because that will kill at least 2 days of writing time, me just organising it, which is great. And
I do very similar things. What other things can I add into Scrivener?
Colours, put colour tabs on.
Yes.
And I just have like loads of little scenes that I keep. So I mean, nothing's killed anymore. It's not like, we're in the 19th century where everything was handwritten and you would, we can just chop and change and put things in.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think, there's a fine line between owning your work and being too precious about it, which, as you say, I think it is learned. Because also I always remember now, always thinking, I'm not the first draft's for me, the second draft is for everyone else.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's about because a lot of it's about what you want from your writing. And if you are writing something that is going to be purely authentically you and it's just for you, then do whatever you want. But if you're writing something and your end goal is that I do want this to be published and I do want this to be, go out to market, that will have to change for publication.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely love writing ridiculously long sentences without, that just ramble on for ages, that are full of like funny, quirky words. But, no one wants to read that. I mean, I think I've snuck a few in.
Every now and again it's fine, but like it's like when you're doing that multiple times on the same page, it's heavy.
Yeah. It's really heavy. But it's almost like I just have to vomit all of the really ridiculous phrases out and then just go back and just sawdust all over and then
yeah. You have the first draft where you just do whatever you want, and then you come back and you're like, okay, I've got to be sensible now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, sensible.
Be serious.
Big girl shoes now. Come on. Yeah.
Exactly. So now that you've gone through the publishing machine, and you've actually sort of documented it on your website. You've got a whole blog on lucybarkerwrites.com, which anyone can go and look at, and you can see the various steps from like when you first signed with your agent to edits to signing with the publisher, all this, that, the other. Yeah. If you could go back to the beginning of this whole experience, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently?
No, not at all. I've been so lucky. I probably would have savoured it a bit more. I just remember just being really hot and sweaty and a bit like, about it. No, I don't know. It sounds very arrogant to say, but I feel like I've been really lucky, really lucky. And, I think it's really easy to look at a debut that comes out and people like it and it just be seen in that bubble. But I know that lots of your guests have talked about this as well, that, I've been doing this for years. Yeah. I have been working really hard on it for years, it's all I've ever wanted to do, it's all I think about. I do feel incredibly lucky. It's a proper dream come true, but equally,
you put the time in, you persevered.
Yeah. And I think, if resilience is the absolute key to writing. It really is, and resilience, you've got to take the crits. You've got to listen to what people have to say about your writing, because if it's not working for them, it's not going to work for the wider audience either.
Yes, exactly. One of the things I heard about critique as well is when you are either reading or listening to, however you're doing it, you should never try and defend your book, because everything that someone is saying critically about your book, unless they're being facetious for no reason, everything someone is saying, it, like, that's their experience, and like, you trying to defend it doesn't change their experience of what it was. And what you need to do is figure out why, like, if that's not the experience you intended for them to have, you need to think to yourself, I wonder why that was what came out, and whether I want to change that or just accept that is it and maybe change something else.
Completely agree. I'm actually more interested in, I mean, obviously I'm grateful for every single review, but what I'm finding the ones where there are kind of like, I really enjoyed it, however, they're really helpful. Really helpful.
Okay.
You know, you put them in your back pocket and you're like, right, I'm going to make sure that this happens, or, you know, I pay more attention to this.
But at the same time, you do have to remember that your no book is going to please everyone.
No.
So I think it's almost a failure if your book is sort of pleasing everyone, because it feels difficult for people to love it if everyone likes it. I think the only way you please everyone is if everyone's like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. It's that kind of
agree.
mediocrity where you're like, you're just above mediocrity. We're like, yeah, it's okay. Inoffensive.
There's a goal. To be mediocre.
To be perfectly mediocre.
Yeah. And you know what? The thing is, we all find, you know, we all have different tastes in books. What I like may be different to what you like.
Exactly.
And you're right. And I think, you know, I found Stacey Hall's an absolute inspiration, because I think that Stacey Hall's and Jessie Burton, they changed what we perceive to be as historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, they suddenly created this accessible kind of page turning. And I think, you know, historical fiction's always had that, but they just feel like they changed it a little bit.
Yeah. Speaking of people that inspire you, we are towards the end of the episode, which means it's time to ask the final question, which, as always, is, Lucy, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would it be?
I think I would probably go for The Poisonwood Tree by Barbara Kingsolver.
Okay.
One, it's really fat, so it would give me a lot of time to read. But also, I think it's about survival, and I think it will also have some tips on how to grow things. But I think the heart of it is so generous and warm and kind. It would feel like a hug every time I picked it up. Yeah. Even though some grim things happen.
But that's life, right?
That's life, yeah. Yeah.
You only appreciate the nice things in life because bad things also happen, I guess.
Exactly. So I'd take that.
Okay, well, that's a great choice. Always good to have something that is heartwarming, but also reminds you that it's not
death is around the corner. Yeah,
exactly. Death's just around the corner, guys.
Just around the corner.
And on that note,
yeah.
No, literally on that note.
Yeah, exactly.
Lucy, thanks so much for coming on. It's been really fun chatting with you, and really interesting hearing all about your writing and your journey and Victorian mediums.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved it.
And for anyone wanting to keep up with what Lucy is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at Lucy Small Bark, on Instagram at Lucy Barker Author, or as I mentioned previously, head over to her website, lucybarkerwrites.com, where you can read through the blog of her kind of whole journey through writing and publishing. It's a really fun and interesting read. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow along on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and to support the show, head over to the Patreon page. And for more bookish chat, you can check out my other podcasts, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Lucy, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.